Well, it's time for me to get into the repair of Amazing Grace here. And let's start with the hardest bits first. What do you say? Okay, here's the nose cowl and been mashed up well. I've wrapped up some bubble wrap and have seen that I can basically give it some support. And I realize that anything I put on this outside isn't going to stick terribly well because it's got this smooth finish on it, and it looks like that's been applied along with the fiberglass. It's not just a covering that I can take off. So at least structurally I want the strongest bits to be on the inside. So what the plan is I'm going to take this out, okay. I'm going to apply the resin and glass to the inside here. I'm going to wrap this in greaseless paper and shove it back in there. And I might even try, this is where the motor used to come out, and I might even see what I can do with regard to filling up these holes. Might even end up with it better than what it was, who knows. So that's the basic plan. Okay, so anyway, we've put some resin around on the inside, around the various openings and things. We then put the cloth in place. I've used a rather heavy cloth. In some cases, I've split it down the middle. You can peel this apart to make it thinner. But I'm not worried about weight up here because we had to put nose weights in it anyway, so it's fine if it turns out heavy. Across the opening here, when I first, this tape got put on later, so when I first shoved in the foam stuff, this bulged way out. So I put the tape to hold it down, and I can fill that in a little bit. And then over here it was bulging out a little bit, so I put that on there and put some tape across it to help hold it in place. And I think that's all going to hold it in there okay. I might, just since it's still thinking about what it's doing, I might just take this and give it a little bit of encouragement to stay in there. Okay, just to hold it in place. It's leaking out a bit, but we'll clean that up in due course. I realize this tape on the outside is no doubt going to stick to the stuff, but I'm figuring on totally refinishing the outside anyway, in every way. This little bit right here, I'm trying to get that reasonably level. Again, if it's in a little bit, I can add some fill to the outside of it. Well, here we have our cowling for the red-tail P-51 Amazing Grace. We had put the fiberglass on the inside, crammed bubble wrap in there, and well, we put greaseless paper in there first, then crammed bubble wrap in there to press everything out and let the resin harden. And so this is what we got. Okay, so just looking at what to do next. First off, as we piece together what's left of the former, that the firewall that was in the spot. Okay, so the first thing that I see is this right here has got a lot of fiberglass in there, and that doesn't want to hold down too well. Probably could add a screw and get it to do it, but I think I'll try and relieve it a bit in here and put that in there. In retrospect, I think if I was doing this again, what I would do is I would have this in there before I did the fiberglass stuff. So let's say we put the resin and the fiberglass cloth in there. Then we wrap this in some greaseless paper and we put that in there to form it the way that we want it. Maybe even having something where we'd screw it on to hold it in there. Yeah, easier said than done at the moment. Okay, so maybe even have some things where I can screw it onto there to hold it in place. And then I think I would insert a balloon into here and inflate the balloon to hold it out to support these other bits. Of course, we had the great big holes where it used to have the glow fuel motor in there, and we put the fiberglass cloth and the resin over that. So anyway, I think I'd put the balloon in there, but I might also, actually before I put the balloon in there, take some heavy tape and put it across here, just to have something that holds that to be roughly the right distance out. If the balloon is pushing on that, it's likely to bulge out. So I think if we taped over that with some masking tape over these holes, then we put the balloon in there, and we don't worry about the greaseless paper. If a little bit of balloon sticks on it, that can be ground off or whatever. But put the balloon in there to inflate it, to hold everything out to where it belongs. So that might have been a better approach. But given that we've got what we've got, what I'm going to do is I'm going to first off grind in here a bit to relieve this, and maybe grind a little bit in there to let this get more flexible here, to where I can get that in there flat and try to flatten that out a bit. In these areas in here, I'll be using some resin with microbubbles as a filler to fill in both on this side and where it's going to be ground down, like say where you got a bump that's sticking out here. I want to make sure I got the resin of the microbubbles on the inside of that, so that I can grind it down on this side and have it be smooth. This bit here just got missed. I didn't get the fiberglass on there, so that one I'll do a little bit to suss up a bit. Okay, then I'll end up using microbubbles and stuff in this. And I might mention with this cowl, the plane was lightweight on the nose, and so I'm not worried about this getting a bit heavy. It had lead in here before, and it needed a little bit more than what it had. So, you know, in this particular case, I'm not fussed if I end up with a fair bit of fiberglass in this thing. I think we're going to be fine as far as weight and balance goes. So anyway, after I get all of this stuff done up reasonably nice, then I'll start looking a little bit more about tidying this up around here. Again, I think it'll be probably grinding off the yellow stuff and putting in some resin with the microbubbles and filling that in. A little bit of grinding to clean things up and stuff like that. It won't be perfect, but I think we'll do a fair job of getting that thing going again. So we're quite pleased with the progress. It is coming along. There's a few things yet to go, but yeah, it's progressing well, along with our Great Plains 40 project that's sitting over there as well. Got lots of things happening at the moment. Well, we're going to be doing the grinding with a Dremel modal tool. Very important that you have proper breathing protection when you start grinding on fiberglass type stuff. And we'll get right into it and see how we go. Okay, we got a bit aggressive on this and ended up with next to nothing on the edge there. But anyway, did a little bit of grinding around to make sure I had something to stick onto in various places. But what I've got to do is fix up this bit down here where I've gone a little bit overboard. And of course that was where I wanted it to be flexible, and it still is a bit stiff and from some places in there. But I think if I flatten that out, the rest of it I'll be able to even out here. So I've got my baking paper here, which I often refer to as greaseless paper. I'm going to put some fiberglass in here, put some more baking paper on top of that, and then I worked out a couple of pieces of wood that I can stick in here to clamp down And so we're going to clamp her down like that to flatten out that area. So we'll get that area first, and then later on we'll worry about this one up here. Although I might be able to get that too. And mixing up the resin, I'm using this Protite stuff. But I've worked out that 1 drop of the hardener per milliliter is about right as far as what they recommend. You know, they recommend larger amounts, and I tend to be mixing up small amounts. So yeah, 1 drop per milliliter is what we're going to be doing. Well, as we work with these small quantities, we got a measuring cup here that's quite precise, but it's got little bumps on the inside of it. And if I ever use this to actually put resin in it, it's going to throw off the measurements for every other time that I use it. So what I'm going to do, so I've got a cap off of a milk bottle here. I'm going to pour water in it to fill it up. Just a bit of a crest on it, so I'll just take out just a bit. Water will tend to arch up a little bit. What do they call it? Meniscus or something or other. Okay, that's basically practically full. And I'm measuring the volume of that cap. And where's my scale? Okay, so that is 12 milliliters. Okay, 1 capful is 12 milliliters. So, right off, I'm going to write 12 on it so that I remember that that's what it is. I'm going to dry it out because we don't want to mix water with our resin. And of course we can get that out of the way. Don't need that anymore. I like to keep water in a bottle at the bench. Use it for all kinds of things, but for example, if I'm getting ready to solder, I've got a sponge that I need to put water on, and so it's handy having the water here for that. And yeah, here's an example that I never really would have anticipated, but you know, I thought about going out to the tap and I thought, no, I got a bottle of water right here. We can do that. Okay, so that's nice and dry. Okay, now the next thing is trying to pour out of a can is ridiculous. So have yourself a spoon or something like that that you can get the resin out with. Of course, resin, you don't have to worry about stirring it or anything like that. So you just want to get some resin and fill up the cap. Pretty close. Okay, so we've got our resin in there. Then we need to put it in something. So I'll use this little guy here. You can see I've got it marked for 30 milliliters if I was doing a larger amount. And this is one that you can properly clean out. I note I got a little bit that's left in here, and probably a little bit on the spoon, so we will just do our best to clean that out and get a little bit extra off of the spoon. Okay, so we'll call that good in terms of our 12 milliliters. So we're going to put 12 drops in there. Now how much resin you put in is also going to depend on the temperature. And today it's, you know, a bit mild. It's, I don't know, what is it? High 60s maybe Fahrenheit. Probably 19 or something Celsius. And now with 12 mils, I want 12 drops. I might put a drop or two extra if it was cold, and a drop or two less if it was really warm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay. So we're talking about pretty nice fine measurements here. We then need to stir it up nicely. The resin with a hardener is also going to set much quicker if it's left in quantity, where it's a bunch of it's together. It takes longer if it's spread out, and that's due to the heat that it generates. As the hardener is reacting with the resin, it's creating heat, and when you've got it all together, it warms it up, and that makes it harden quicker. Okay, so we're all set to go here. Properly, I'd like to have finer cloth than this, but this is what I've got. And normally you'd be using a brush as you put the resin on, but of course with the brushes you go through them. They only can be used once, and with a spoon I can wipe it off and use it as much as I want. So anyway, if I had an old brush I'd be using it, but right at the moment I'm using what I've got. Okay, and so this stuff is such that you can manipulate it. So you put a bit on there, and then if you're using a brush, you'd be working around on the edges. It's okay to have it overlapped a little bit on the outside, because that you can grind off very easily. Okay, and we work it around on the edges. That glass will spread around, and you can thin it out on the edges. Not terribly important in this particular situation here because it's all on the inside, but especially if you had it on the outside, by working out the fibers out to the edges, it then spreads it out a lot more and makes it more even. And you can see that this mat is working around. I'm just bringing it to where I need it to be. Working those fibers, getting everything in place. Okay, so that's looking pretty good there. Not worried about the stuff that's on the greaseless paper, the baking paper. Yeah, what little bits are there we can get off later. Okay, now I'm going to take some more baking paper and cut some to keep the wood from sticking to it. This in here like so. I'm going to then put our pieces of wood in place. One there and one here. that one right up near the edge. Put a clamp on there. That's that one. And this one, kind of like that, I think. Okay, so that's that. Now, while I'm in here, I think I might do this little thing here too. A couple of blocks of wood that I think will fit. Okay, that can clamp that flat. See what I got. Any resin left? Okay. Again, the brush should be nice. You know, I'm using a spoon just because it's what I got, but you know, having several of the throwaway brushes would be a good thing to do. But don't let that stop you from doing what you need to do. Be innovative and do whatever works. So we're going to stick this on there. Add some more resin to the outside of that. Instead of working it around, because I had the resin sort of at the bottom of it, and I'm making the bottom the top, just to help distribute the resin a bit. Again, with a brush should be easier, but this is going to do the job. And again, if you work around the edges, you can even it out a bit more if you're wanting to have a really nice smooth sort of job in the end. In this particular case, again, we're not terribly fussed. I'm just trying to get it all back together. And looks like that 12 mils of resin was pretty well perfect for the job that we had here. Okay, so now we again need some greaseless paper on the inside. So we put that on our block. Put the inside block in place. We have a look for where the bend is and make sure that we got that bend. Okay, so we got a clamp that'll fit in there. Okay. Oftentimes when you're doing a resin type job, you can actually use vacuum to clamp things together. And whenever you're able to put some pressure onto a surface that's getting fiberglassed with the resin and the glass, it's going to squeeze out all of the excess air. It's going to get the glass as close as possible to the surface that you're working with, and you're going to end up with a stronger joint. So that's going to be a beautiful job in both of these cases in terms of strength. While we're at it here, I'm going to go ahead and do a bit of filling in this area there, since that's all out exposed nicely. I got these microbubbles ages ago. It's just sort of brown sort of stuff that I think they're little air bubbles that are, you know, encased in some sort of material. But it weighs basically nothing, and you can use it as a filler with the resin to be able to get what you want. So anyway, I'm going to start out with our same little magic 12 mils. Yeah, I've cleaned this off. I got hardener on it though. That's a bit of an issue, isn't it? I think I'll get another lid and dip it out. Okay, so I've got another lid here. I just don't want to go sticking a spoon into my resin container that has had hardener on it, because it'll get a trace of that hardener. If this was all hard, then that would be fine, but I haven't given it enough time to fully harden. So all of the chemical reaction hasn't finished, and I don't want to stick this into there. So I've got another lid, and we'll use this as a scoop. And this is going to be our scoop. Notice we cleaned this out completely after the last one, just to be able to use it again. Now we put this in there, recognizing that some of it is going to stick into the cup. We'll also dump what we got out of that one in there. Okay, we now want 12 drops of hardener. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, 12. We can now use our spoon to stir it up. And now to give it volume, we're going to add the microbubbles. And let's just get this on there before I do the wrong thing. Okay, so I got my microbubbles here. This obviously isn't the original container it came in. I've had this for ages, and this is probably 20, 30 years old. Way back in the early days of my modeling, I bought this. Okay, so I'm going to rake some in there. So now what we do is we mix microbubbles with resin. Essentially what you want is mostly microbubbles, but all of them coated with the resin. So you can see it's creating a nice muddy sort of texture there. And all mixed in nicely. Now we can take this and apply it to that, and the trick will be to get it to stay put. A lot easier if it's flat, and I guess if I had more micro bubbles and less resin, it would be even better. Not too fussed about this stuff getting onto other things. We will grind off the excess. Over here we've got the fiberglass job that we did, and I'm just checking the stuff I spilled here, and it's pretty hard, so I think we can take all of the clamps off of this dude. Okay, peel that off. Okay, so looking reasonably good. We will grind this here to get that down a bit, so that's fine. Probably need a little bit more filling in there. Inside, this baking paper is great for not sticking. Okay, that will just cut off. That's not a problem there. Looks like this side is pretty straight. And then remember that was all bowed out before. So I straightened that out pretty nicely. And it's now nice and solid, whereas before it was very marginal through there. That's all looking good. I added on just that little bit there because I had some extra stuff, so we'll grind that back and add a little bit more in there when we sort of focus on that area. This sort of got stuck on a bit. Give it a twist, and that comes off, that comes off, and that's now nice and solid. That had a kink in it before. I don't know if we should do anything to this here or not. I don't think it's going to break. It's just a question of finishing it off. But I think if we grind on it a bit, and touch it up, but then it'll end up getting covered with covering. So it looks to me like our cowl is coming along pretty good. Okay. Having finished the nasty set of sanding, we can get the camera back out and show you what we've done. So we started out with a Dremel and just using a cutoff wheel, this little guy like that. We trimmed off the extra bit that was hanging over the edges to get that all nice. Let's see, then I guess next I went to the orbital sander, and we sanded all of this area around here. You remember how that was sticking way out? As I said, I expected we'd have to add a little bit in here, so we're going to have a little bit to do there to touch up. It's always a challenge when you're working with anything like this, whether it's plastering or body work or whatever else, to sort of work out whether there's any little things that are going to show up. Like if you were to spray paint this thing, you know, you'd have little bits and pieces show up. I'm expecting that we're putting covering on this, but to tell the truth, I'm not sure how that's going to work. So spray painting, it certainly would be a possibility. But anyway, we've got our sides nice and straight now. The bottom is nice and straight. We got all these areas filled in. We've got to start on doing the end here. And by the way, when you're doing this with the orbital sander, I basically got it pretty close. And then I use a sanding block to make sure that I had the edges sort of more or less straight, you know, going through here without any big bumps and stuff like that. It's got a little bit of a curve to it. But basically with a block, you can sort of work out whether something is a bit proud, you know, sticking up, or whether it's coming down. And you do have to be careful of that sander because it'll really dig in a hurry. So anyway, working with this and sort of setting it down, it takes a little bit slower, and you can actually see what's happening. Okay, so this area here where you had that crack through there, that remains to be seen. It's certainly plenty solid, but it's probably going to be pretty obvious that there's some damage across there. So again, a lot depends on whether I get away with putting the shrink wrap type covering on it, you know, the normal covering, iron-on covering, or whether I spray paint it. So that's looking a little bit better. That, by the way, does have fiberglass on the inside of it, so it's staying pretty solid. Okay, so I think I'm ready to add a little bit on there, and I'd like to do some more on this too, but I also want to be thinking about cooling for the motor, because right now I just have this little tiny thing there. Used to have this huge hole in the side of it. So I might want to do something more in terms of cooling. Here is our cowl as we've got it thus far. Looking really good, you know, better than what I could have really imagined. Of course, we've put in the resin with the microbubbles in as a filler, which sands up pretty nicely. You know, we've got a few tiny imperfections that I can feel now, just running my finger across it. Got a little bit more sanding to do there, but by and large, it's coming really good. As I was doing the sanding on this, I used the orbital sander for a start. And like in this major area here where there was quite a bit on there, I just used that to get it down somewhere close. And then I've used a bit of sandpaper on a sponge sort of block type of thing to get it down the rest of the way. And if need be, we can use some finer sandpaper on it to get rid of any of the little scratches and stuff. But the other thing, you know, I got just this little tiny air intake here. I realize the spinner can be set off a little bit off of the front of this, and that will allow air to suck in going past it, especially if, you know, given that we got a big hole that allows the air to go through the fuselage, and in the back of the fuselage we got an exit that'll tend to want to suck air into it, and so it will suck some air in past the spinner. But what I'm thinking is I can make this little scoop down below the nose significantly bigger and still have it look pretty good. And given that we're working with fiberglass, there's no reason why I can't do that. So I think I might doctor that up a bit, and we'll see what happens. So what I've done is I've marked out a little smiley face on there as to what I think I might cut out. I'll use the Dremel to do the initial cut, and then we will just have a look at it after I get the cut out, and we'll do a little bit of grinding on it to even it out. And then I'll use a bit of the micro bubbles on there just to thicken up the edge of it and make it look a little bit more like it's supposed to be there. Okay. So here's our initial cut, and you can see how much bigger that is. We just cut out this little piece here that was in there. But that has made a huge difference in terms of the amount of area that we've got for the air to come in. So I'll be much happier with that as far as keeping the motor cool. Well, with this, I don't think I need to build that up at all. To me, that, you know, that's nice and solid there. If I build it up on the inside, this is going to reduce the area to go in there. What I did with this, of course, I used the Dremel to cut it initially. I then used the Dremel with the little drum tool to get in there and just get the edges a little bit. I wanted to make sure that I had radiuses on these corners. Structurally, anytime you have a sharp sort of corner in something, that creates a stress riser. And so like you see, this one is nice and round. That one isn't quite all the way there yet, so I'll be working that with a round rat tail file, little one like this, to round that out. As you're getting this edge here, it's always good to work with a file as if you're doing it on sheet metal, not just going in and out, but going along the length of it. And then with something like this, I've got a little bit thicker fiberglass in here than what was over there, so I had to be conscious of having to work on that a little bit harder in there. I also used a bit of sandpaper going in there and rubbing that back and forth on there like so, and a variety of different things to get it into that shape. So we're looking pretty good. I might just go ahead, since we're being pedantic about this, I'll go ahead and fill in a couple of these holes, and I got that little tiny spot there that could use a little bit more of the micro bubbles, a little bit more sanding here, and she's ready to go. I got thinking about these little imperfections in this cowl, and I realized I don't need to mix up some more resin and micro bubbles for that. I can just simply utilize some ordinary filler. They're just very minor imperfections. It's going to either get covered with covering or some decent paint anyway. So that'll do the job. Well, we now have one very beautiful cowl. I mean, have a look at that. That is just really nice all around, and you know, it's going to be way better than what it was when before the crash. You know, no longer has a great big hole in the side of it, and it's all going to be nice and smooth all around. I'm really happy with that. So, I trust that you found it helpful watching that video. Keep in mind that the whole project continues, and in one of the next videos we'll be showing you what we're doing with this. Yeah, that's coming along really well too. And as with the cowl, we go through all kinds of stuff and details as to how we've done the repair. So be sure to subscribe, and just click on the little round thing with my picture on it. And it doesn't cost you anything, and that means that you'll have everything handy to be able to follow on with the rest of it. And then while you're at it, have a look at some of our other videos on the channel. So you have a great day and happy flying.